What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I kind of want to do a quick intro. We interviewed Kyle today. He has done $2.5 million in the last 12 months. We talked to him how he does that, what his business looks like, what is the structure, does he have VAs, is he wholesale, is he OA? You're going to be surprised. You might think he's wholesale, but maybe not. How he sources. We talk about health, mental health, kind of how you run a business and kind of the downsides sometimes. We talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, the future of Nike, what we think will happen with gating, the future of Amazon, all sorts of stuff. So we got a great episode for you guys. Before we get into the episode, I just want to let you know Tuesday is the big day. It will be the first call in the coaching call in advanced arbitrage tactics. If you guys don't know what that is a school community I just started. We'll be doing bi-monthly calls. So every month we'll have 2 calls. We'll all be going over how to source profitable products, how to grow and scale your business, what it really takes to take your business to the next level, get people on who have huge businesses, interview them. You also have access to an OA crash course. There's about 15 modules in there, how you can get up and running. The group is only $15 a month. Everyone is calling me crazy for doing it. It will never be this cheap again. And then there's another 4 or 5 resources in there. You also get to ask me questions via the community and access to a community of people who want to take their Amazon business to the next level. If you are watching this past Tuesday, all calls will be recorded, so you can catch the replay. I hope to see you guys in there, and let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Side Hustle Experiment podcast. I usually don't introduce us, so I don't really know what John says here, but my friend is here. Kyle does Amazon, so thought I would introduce today. So what's up, Kyle?
Yeah, what's going on, guys?
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, so I guess introduce yourself a little bit for people that don't know who you are, because you haven't been very active on socials forever, so you might be completely new to basically everybody watching.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't know me, I've been around Amazon for the past 3 or 4 years now. Me and Drew have kind of known each other behind the scenes. We worked a little bit doing some OA together back in the day, that kind of thing. Similar background, I would say. I started off pretty young when I was like 19, around that time. And was kind of like hustling RA, getting used to everything. Just slowly built up to like where it is today. But yeah.
Yeah, cool. How much you've done in sales on Amazon, you think?
I think the past 12 months is like 2.5 million, something like that. Past 12. So
Dang,
That's awesome.
I didn't know you had that many in sales. Yeah, so I guess overall we were kind of talking about before we got on here about what you think about Amazon right now. So from somebody doing 2.5 million, it's probably good to share that perspective. So what were you kind of saying before? Are you bullish? You bearish? What do you kind of think about it?
yeah, I think overall Amazon's still a pretty good opportunity. I think for me personally, probably the past 7 to 9 months, I've adjusted the way I've done things from a risk perspective, because I do feel like there is a pretty big risk on Amazon right now with, a lot of the things that we've seen recently, whether it be Section 3 or brands getting gated completely. I've seen a lot of people personally that I know, like their lives get turned upside down. So it's like, it's a very serious thing. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily address it as such. So I think for me, I've kind of de-risked and de-leveraged some debt. I've strategized in some different brands. And I think me and Drew have talked about this before, but the way I've positioned the business this year is that Q1, I didn't really have heavy inventory loads. I didn't really care what Q1 looked like from a revenue perspective, because I feel like in this business in Q1, you can put so much work and hours into Q1, but like your trade-off is not that high for the risk that you're taking. So, I mean, for me, I'm focused on Q3 and Q4 really hard. All my POs are coming in like mid Q2, Q3. So I'm like positioning myself as best I can for the point when, the risk and the reward are like completely detached from each other. So.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense. And I guess you learn a lot of that stuff too. One thing I probably should have mentioned before is I always talk about talking to these really big sellers that do like 5 mil and 10 mil. And I feel like one of the only other guys that do that is you. So when you talk about this stuff, it's like you don't really hear that, I guess, when you just pay attention to like the Twitter and the Instagram stuff, because the cap is kind of like a mil, 2 mil of what people are talking about. But behind the scenes, these guys are doing like 5 to 10 mil. And a lot of them share like the same sentiment, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the people that you don't see in the public eye, with Amazon especially. I think it's kind of like, I think a lot of it is a personality thing. I think the people that are extremely good at Amazon are kind of like the nerdy like archetypes that just kind of like behind the scenes, like they're just doing their thing and they don't want any interaction with people. So I think the people that are really, really good, like most of them are faceless and you don't know just because it's a personality thing.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the Arbops guys until Drew said, he's like, dude, these guys are doing like $5-10 million. Like who? Like he's like, they're not on social. I'm like, so that's when I joined like Arbitrage Ops, and I was like, oh damn, like this is some crazy shit.
Yeah, I think the RBOps guys, the cool thing about them, a lot of them are kind of like crypto background. So they've always been like the anonymous, like kind of like people that kind of just like come around and, um, you know, they're obviously doing really well. Some of them did really well with crypto and just kind of like parlayed that into Amazon and have grown really big stores that way. So
Yeah, so I haven't talked to a lot of those guys since, I like quit a few months ago. So what do those guys share about the whole Amazon space right now? Like, I'm sure you're in contact.
I'm not as tied in with Arbitrage Ops as I used to be. I mean, I'm still a member. I still, go in the group and I still talk to the admins and the owners of the group pretty regularly. They put out some really good stuff. I mean, I feel like as far as people who really want to understand Amazon and make it a business, I think that's the best group that I've seen. There may be something else out there that I'm not aware of, but for me, I mean, they helped me understand a lot of sophisticated things. I mean, I know Charles and Jeff are the two owners now, and they're still doing like weekly group coaching and instructing people on how they feel about certain things and the ungating stuff that's going on and all that sort of stuff. They've been filling people in on that.
Yeah.
What do you think about the ungating thing? Do you think it's good? It's bad? The whole Nike, Converse, Adidas. I think Adidas is back. Disney is back supposedly, but Nike is not back for new sellers. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing about this kind of stuff. I don't really try to react to it for like 2 weeks, because you don't really know when Amazon rolls out something like this, if it's a glitch, if it's real, if, there's so many different things. I think ultimately if it is holding up, I think it's kind of double-edged because I think it could overall be good for the platform and selling on Amazon in the long term. It gets rid of a lot of the bad actors, but I also feel bad for the 18-year-old kids that have $25,000 on a credit card in Nike and just their life could be ruined, because they just destroyed their credit history and have all this debt, just because they were doing what, somebody else told them to do or what they saw on Twitter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the same way I feel about it. I guess it helps like the older sellers and stuff, but I don't know. I'm looking at it from like a brand perspective as well, which I've shared this sentiment like 50 times on the podcast. But I just feel like Amazon's turning into a brand centric platform. And like once these brands are like, people are selling our shit for fake stuff. We got to start gating these stuff. We got to start like Section 3 and that type of thing. I think that could be kind of the direction, but it could be a glitch too, especially because Nike and Converse and those things don't have a relationship with Amazon, from my understanding.
Well, I mean, truthfully, I have no idea what Amazon's goal is with, the stuff they're rolling out. I don't think any of us do. But I think what would make sense logically is they're trying to get rid of a very small percent of their revenue that causes like 80% of their problems. So like there's this little bucket of people that are causing all the problems with fakes, all the customer complaints, and they don't really make them that much money anyway. So it's like, why don't we just get rid of some of these smaller players and make our platform better overall? I think that's what they're trying to do, but who knows?
That would make a ton of sense based on like almost kind of how like the Nike market got like super saturated. Like, yeah, if they're getting the money and making the margin on the seller fees, but now that like if socks are like $15-18, they're causing all these problems. Like, what is Amazon making?
Right.
From that? Like, not much. Just a lot of headaches, lost customers. Like, it doesn't make sense for them anymore.
Right. I mean,
But at
Amazon doesn't
$34,
really.
it's like, oh, maybe that is worth it to deal with.
Yeah, and I mean, Amazon's not really making a lot of their money on selling and the marketplace in general. I mean, they're so into web services and all these different things now where they're really making high margin at. So it's kind of just like at this point a means for Amazon to maintain their brand and boost their brand more than anything as far as the marketplace.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched that. The Bob Box Bandits had an episode where they were talking about this situation. And I don't watch much Amazon stuff anymore, but I tuned in because I wanted to see their thoughts. And I think Chris Grant had brought up like that with Nike brings in X amount of revenue per year in seller fees, and it was like a really big number, but that's like a little bit misleading because the number's big, but compared to Amazon, which is like $1 trillion company, that number's like literally nothing. Like them getting rid of that number, like you said, the problems associated with the number are probably way more than stuff that's bringing them in $1 billion a year. So that,
Right.
I'd say that they just don't even care to lose the like seller fees when it comes to, okay, now we don't have to deal with all these complaints and all these like shipping fees that we have to cover sometimes and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to watch if I don't really think this will happen, but I think it is possible that either Amazon or another major like retail company could try to kind of manage Nike sales channel on Amazon going forward. I know they kind of did that in the past and it was kind of a disaster, and Nike and Amazon kind of hate each other. For those that don't know, they had like a big falling out a few years back with the partnership that they had.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these brands have a huge problem right now. I don't know if you guys keep up with Nike and like their earnings reports and all that. But with, the COVID stuff that happened, basically all these brands had a huge supply issue. So they ramped up their supply to try to meet demand. And now everything is kind of in a glow at this point. There's like too much inventory for them to sell. This is what I've seen with a lot of brands. And it's just now starting to kind of level out. But I feel like the past like 6 months has been pretty bad in that aspect.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that, but I don't keep very good track of it either. So I guess what's your future with Amazon when it comes to all this stuff? I guess like do you keep growing, or what's your goal with it?
For me personally, I'm pretty comfortable in the like $2 to $5 million range. I don't really see or at least right now want to really go past that. I just feel like the amount of risk and leverage that you take on for the potential reward just doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe if I was in a different point in my life where I did want to do it, or it did make sense, or if the market adjusts and profit margins are significantly better for a certain amount of time, that would be something to look at. But for me, I just don't really see it, and I'm also interested in working on like other things on the side and kind of diversifying outside of Amazon.
Yep, that makes sense. I guess, well, on the leverage and risk thing, I guess some people probably, I mean, I'm sure they don't know. You had like a debt situation too, where you were like all stressed out about that. Kind of tell a little bit about that situation, what you learned from that. Because I feel like you came to this perspective probably from that a lot, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was from kind of learning and seeing what like you're personally comfortable with as, sort of a risk tolerance thing, which for me, it might be different than for somebody else. I know some guys that can have millions and millions of dollars in loans and it literally just doesn't faze them whatsoever. For me personally, it does a little bit. And I just feel like the years off your life and the health that you're sacrificing just don't really make sense, at least in this opportunity. I mean, maybe if you were making like hundreds of millions of dollars or something, it might make sense. But, in this sort of realm, it doesn't, especially when you have a force like Amazon that can basically shut off your payments at any time, whenever they want, for basically whatever reason they want. So I think that's kind of been a learning curve. But yeah, for me, I was scaling pretty hard last year, wanted to really like blow up, which I still was like 100% up last year on the year following. But I wanted to get to like, I think my goal was like 4.5, 5 million last year. Didn't really get there because about halfway through the year, I got really heavy into wholesale and like leveraging debt and that sort of thing. And I just felt like it wasn't really for me mentally. And especially seeing people get their accounts shut down and all that kind of stuff going on, just kind of made me back off a bit from, scaling that hard, I guess.
What's your business mix now?
What's that?
Like OA to wholesale, what's your kind of mix?
It's hard to say. I have a bunch of wholesale arriving like May through June. But so far this year has been primarily OA.
Okay.
So I'll have these POs hitting. So I'd probably say like 60-40. It's probably like a realistic split of that.
So were you trying to go from OA all the way to wholesale?
That was some of it. Last year I did kind of make a transition into some bigger wholesale categories, and I think wholesale and OA are very different, like for people that are trying to switch from one to the other. And I think certain categories in wholesale, even if you might feel like you know them in OA, it's like completely different, because you're competing against people that are literally 1,000 times bigger than you, and they like it doesn't matter to them if they lose $5,000, like they'll just like price to whatever. Whereas when you're an OA seller and you're competing against other OA sellers, so they're like trying to focus on every little penny and that sort of thing. But I know some really big wholesale sellers, like their whole business model is to essentially drive price down on a lot of stuff in the short term, because if they lose on 500 units, but they're sitting on 30,000 and they just drive everyone else off the listing by basically getting a price war, and then they have the listing to themselves. In the long term, they end up making a lot more money that way. So I've seen that. It's kind of interesting with really big wholesale.
Yeah, I feel like you never hear that perspective on it either. Like I didn't know. See, I've never even done wholesale, but I talked to you, and then I talked to all these other guys in wholesale that were in Arbops, and like all the stuff you see on social media is just so much different than how that really is. Like stuff like that, I've never even heard that before. What you'd hear on a podcast or hear on Twitter or whatever. But like people think, oh, I'm going to do wholesale. I'm just going to get this list of shit and just find what's profitable and then send it in. It's like way different game than that, especially if you're trying to actually make good money with it and like make big purchase orders. If you get caught with $50K in inventory, like what are you going to do then? If the price is now negative 40% ROI or whatever, and you can't even sell it fast, like the sales rate might back up or whatever.
Right. And then with wholesale, you have the risk of like, the brand getting restricted or an ASIN getting restricted that you have a ton of money in. So like there definitely is more risk attached to wholesale. I do think if you can get really good at wholesale, it's probably more lucrative in the long term. But I think you're essentially going up a level in wholesale. So you're competing against people that are way smarter and have way more money than you were competing against in OA, typically, just generally speaking. So it's just like you're basically climbing up a ladder, and if you're not ready or prepared to adjust and learn that market, like you're going to get washed back down essentially. So,
yep. I remember you talking to me that you were going to start scanning some stuff for RA or whatever. Did you ever start doing that?
Yeah. Last year I looked a little bit into RA. I know some people that actually do really, really big scale RA, which is crazy. To me, like that's just madness, and having like 20 shoppers in person that are like going around to all these different places. I think I know a few people that are doing like 10 million plus and like primarily RA, which is crazy. The margin's obviously really good. Yeah. Those people are killing it.
It was insane to kind of hear.
Yeah.
How they
it's
do
crazy.
That.
I know Soros had a pretty good RA operation a couple years ago when he was growing really big, and he was in Miami. So if you're located like geographically in an advantageous area to do RA, I think it definitely makes a lot of sense. Now I feel like RA is pretty competitive. I mean, I feel like every time I go on TikTok or Instagram, I see a video on how to do RA, and I'm not even looking for it, right? So I feel like there's a lot of people that are trying to do that at a small scale, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that do like, I think like Joe Hart and those guys, they do like ollies and stuff.
Yep.
And they do really well. And a lot of that stuff is basically buying and like waiting for all the new sellers to sell out. They come on the listing and like waiting for like 2-3 months or maybe longer and selling at like 100% ROI. So it's really interesting like business model for people that have time and are looking for like a alternative investment vehicle, which is kind of a good way to look at Amazon. I think for a lot of people look at it as like an alternative investment to like the stock market or something, because it really doesn't take that much time once you get it running and established.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I have a guy I mentored him last year. He like lives near me, and he was telling me the other day he's sending a shipment of like $3-4 grand RA, and he said they checked in and 80% of the products were tanked. And he was like, "What do I do?" And I was like, "I guess you got to just hold him for a longer time because it's a lot of ollies and stuff." He was like, "Yeah, he quit. He just sent it. And he was like, I'm selling through this stuff and I'm not doing this anymore." And I was like, "Yeah, man. I mean, I get it because he's been doing it for years and never had that issue." And then like this year, he's like, everything I buy, man, it's just like tanks immediately because there's so many people doing it. Like you said, I'm sure it's because he's on TikTok and Instagram talking about it.
Well, that's kind of the good thing about RA and even OA. I think it eliminates the ability to overbuy on a lot of things. Like you literally just can't get enough of certain items, even if you try your hardest, to the point where a lot of people can, say you're selling wholesale and you have an item that's doing great and you just continuously buy it. And then you keep upping your order. And then Amazon or some massive third party comes on the listing and, decreases the price by 25% or whatever, or they decide they don't want you to sell the product anymore, all those sorts of things. And you can really be in a situation where you're like, okay, how do I sell 3,000 units of this? It's not like you can just list it on Facebook Marketplace or something, unless you list it on it for 5 years. But it creates an interesting, cash flow challenge when you're able to actually buy and overbuy certain items, especially seasonally too. Seasonal purchases can be really dangerous if you overbuy, which is hard to do with OA or RA most of the time.
Yeah. That I remember you had bought something, right? That you were like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this because I've got like 4 months left to sell it. And you were like, what did ever happen with that? Which obviously you don't have to say what it was or whatever, but like, what can you give kind of the story of it? Because I think that story is a really good learning lesson because it makes sense, like the seasonality and stuff.
Well, seasonality is like huge. I really like seasonality on Amazon. It's kind of become more mainstream the past few years. Like people do back to school and like backpacks and all that sort of stuff. Last year it really came on strong. But when you're doing seasonality and you're trying to plan wholesale orders to arrive at a certain time, like for a season, like let's say you order swimming trunks or like, flip-flops, whatever kind of summer item that you're looking at, you're supposed to arrive, let's say in, April, May right now would be ideal. If you could get it right now, then you have 2 weeks to a month to fully check in, and then you're really in the prime season. But, if your stuff gets stuck on a container for 3 months and it arrives in August or September instead, like you're completely screwed essentially until next spring. So it's like, you can't really control the supply chain with wholesale sometimes. So you have to be careful with your lead times and like trusting the stuff will arrive. And then the caveat that you can do that is you can buy stock orders, but with stock orders, you can still run into a lot of issues because usually if stuff's in stock, like there's a lot of supply out there. So it's better in wholesale to have like orders with a little bit of a lead time because it kind of creates a barrier to entry with the competition. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. How did you learn about the wholesale stuff? Did you learn it from Arbops or did you buy anybody's course?
You have an affiliate
honestly, the wholesale stuff, I think it's kind of like, riding your bike and falling on your face and scratching your knees and getting back up and getting back on the bike again. Like, I think that's how a lot of people learn it. And I think that's probably the only way to learn it in a way that you'll be careful next time. Because I think if you don't really feel, the pain on a firsthand level or like the experience, then you don't really respect what you're trying to do, I guess. It's kind of like you see these guys with like crypto or something, like they think they're going to make millions of dollars and then they lose all their money and then they come back and do really well because they learned from that. So I think it's kind of like a parallel to that a little bit, or, trading or any of that kind of stuff. I think the people that usually do good have like moments where they either, have a really bad experience or they like get themselves out of a bad experience, like repeatedly, basically, and kind of minimize their losses.
Yep. Speaking on the crypto, how's that doing?
Yeah, I've been playing around with crypto a little bit. Nothing too crazy, just buying stuff that Drew sends me.
Yeah, I think you sent me one thing. I think it's down like 50%. That's solid. Like,
Yeah, I think the whole market's down 50% right now.
yeah, I was up. I think I was up 20K like total.
Yesterday was pretty good actually for some of my holdings, but today we're down like 40%. So
yeah, I'm not even looking. I'm not looking. I mean, my plan was I was like, I'm going to let it go to zero, let it go to like 35K, 30K or so. I was almost there, and I'm like, I'm waiting until it gets all the way there. Now it's probably, I bet I've lost like 15 grand.
For me, I have a little bit of a threshold to where I'm like, okay, I'm only okay with losing this amount of money. And if we get to this amount of money, like I'm probably going to pull it if it looks bad. That's just kind of what I did. But as far as the upside of it, I'm not really looking to sell it unless I need the cash, or I just feel like the market is at a certain point, but I don't have that much money in it, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I thought when I first talked to you about it, you were going to go pretty hard onto it. I guess you decided not to.
I mean, I have a decent amount, but we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah. Those RBOPS guys too. I think another thing, especially Charles, he's like a crypto guy. I can't imagine how much money he's got in crypto, because I was looking like a lot of the calls that I found from him, and I'm like, I bet he's got like so many millions. I guarantee it.
No, Charles is actually really knowledgeable about crypto and just economics in general. He's a really smart guy. If you ever get a chance to talk to him about all that kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure he was an economics major in college. So he's like super into like market cycles and all those sorts of things. So he's a pretty sharp guy with all that. And I think that helps him a lot with Amazon because he kind of understands things on a more broad spectrum. So
yeah, definitely. Got any good cues, John?
Yeah, for your business, do you have any VAs, or is it all you, or kind of how do you have that situated?
Yeah, I have 2 VAs currently. I've been bigger than that. I think the biggest I ever was like 4 or 5 VAs. But I just feel like it was a little bit unnecessary, and I think it's a lot to manage. I think you have to decide what you want for your business. Like if you want to incorporate your Amazon store and be managing 10 employees and checking up on them all the time and making sure, you know, they're not working for other companies or putting your leads on one of their groups or whatever. I think that is good for some people. Like I know, you know, Soros obviously is a good example of someone who's done OA with a lot of VAs. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if that fits your talent and like your, you know, motivation with Amazon. But for me, I just felt like it wasn't really necessary. And I feel like when you have that big of a team, which is kind of consistent with any business, you have like 2 or 3 people that are basically carrying your business. And then there's 6 other people that are just kind of like okay or slightly above average. And that's just kind of frustrating to deal with and to watch for me. So I would just rather have a small team of people who are very good and just not have to worry about all that.
That's kind of how I looked at it. Like I've had the most VAs I've ever had at once were 3. 2 were like sourcers, and then 1 was for like kind of social media. And to manage all that and all the headspace it took, and they're on different, you want to be flexible. They're working different schedules. Like one VA did good sourcing, the other didn't, and just like trying to get them to work. It was just a nightmare. And for me, I was like, I do not want this. Like, and now that I'm like almost 3 years in, it's just, I'm like a good sourcer. So I do now everything to prep. So I'm just a sourcer. Everything goes to prep. I should probably get like a VA for kind of like, I don't know, like logging stuff in spreadsheets and stuff like that. But the managing of it for me is always a hard part. And I know like if you want to grow, like you're going to need to like get help. But I'm kind of like content where my business is right now, like numbers wise, and kind of doing some other stuff on the side. But yeah, it's always interesting. It feels like for me, people either love VAs and they've like mastered it. I feel like you don't really hear too much bad stuff about it. But from my experience, there's a lot of headaches and a lot of problems. That's probably a me problem, like not being able to manage that. But you never
That's
really
how I've
hear
always kind
like
of felt. Maybe I'm just like a bad manager.
To run a team.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was interesting. You said you do a lot of your sourcing. I think a lot of people try to outsource sourcing and purchasing decisions way too fast.
Yeah,
Um,
I did for sure.
right. And I know a lot of guys that are really big that still make the purchasing decisions because I think it's really hard, at least from my experience, to get VAs, especially ones with cultural differences and different understandings of money, to like make some of the really important buying decisions. Like if you need to buy 300 units of something, I find that's really hard for like a VA that's making $3 an hour to say, oh, let's go spend 30 grand on this product. Like it just doesn't make sense to them. So I think one way to combat that is to hire different cultures. Not only like from the Philippines, like most people do. And but another thing is to go for higher paid VAs, which is something that I've always preferred. I feel like the talent level that you get at like the lower end is just not sophisticated enough to make, some of the important decisions, unless you just want people to, do spreadsheets and like kind of monotonous tasks for you that don't require a lot of like critical thinking. I think definitely higher paid is the way to go.
Yeah, it's like the sourcing is like the really the only value add you bring to the business, right? Like that's the creativity part of it, and that's like what the first thing everybody wants to get out of the way. And you think you're just going to pay somebody like $200 every month to get that? That's like not even. I don't know how that even makes sense to anybody. Yeah, it's the same way I look at it.
Yeah,
it's like,
and I think a lot of sourcing is like intuition and kind of predicting what is going to happen based off previous experiences. And I think it's hard to like replicate or teach that. I find a lot of like bigger sellers even still don't really know how to explain like why I'm buying this or why I'm buying this many. It's just kind of like they've done it so much over and over again and seen it play out, that it's kind of more like
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
knowledge
Like,
from doing. So
yeah, you just get like this gut feeling, and it's like hard to
Right.
like transfer that over. And like I feel a lot of people, because like that's all you hear, like, oh, storefront stock, storefront stock, storefront stock. Like, yeah, that's great for a VA to do, but like we all know, like the best stuff is not in people's storefronts. Like it's
Right.
at the retail store or source right now, and you're going to be the first or second, fourth person to get on that listing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing with arbitrage, like you said, you either have to be like first to something, or you have to catch like the back end where everyone's kind of fallen off of it.
Yep.
And I think the only way you really do that is you either find like prices before everyone else, or you have some sort of advantage, whether it's a supplier that's giving you a better price than your competitors, or you have like a coupon or whatever doing OA, and you have some sort of like layer to it. Because without that, like you're going to be competing against everyone, because it's not that hard to find the stuff that people are selling. So
yeah, what are your recommended sourcing methods? I guess because there are probably some people here that are not pretty much beginners on this stuff. Is there anything that you recommend, kind of? Because I don't think you storefront stock, right? You're not a big proponent of that.
No, not really. I like doing I like using Keepa a lot if I'm doing OA, using like Product Finder and filtering out a lot of different stuff. I know an advantage some people can have is you can have like software that pings you of certain like price offers on certain websites, and a lot of people that do well with things like Slick Deals or Brickseek or something like that kind of monitors prices. But I think ultimately that's the most important thing. If you're doing OA, at least, like you're just looking for cheap stuff, and however you can find the cheapest stuff, versus everyone else is how you're going to win. Whether that be using like Product Finder and looking for stuff that's a certain percentage off or has a certain amount of sellers that, offer counts decreasing, or, all the different things that you can do with it. Or, being first to price alerts or coupons on OA sites. So,
yep. Well, kind of switching tracks a little bit. I think that you'll probably have some interesting stuff to say on this. I know you tried the coaching stuff at the same time as I was doing it as well. You kind of ran into the same hurdles I was running into. I remember us being on a phone call and being like talking about the same exact stuff. So I want to hear your thoughts kind of on the whole coaching thing in Amazon, how you've seen that go. And you've had some personal experience. You kind of know my experience from it. Like, how does all of that look? And what do you think? What do you just think about all that in general?
Coaching is interesting. I think it's definitely very fulfilling to help people reach their goals and to, see people improve, and kind of feel attached to that. So I think that was kind of the goal that I set out with it. Like I wanted to basically pour into, I didn't take many people, the few people that I did take and, give them the best possible outcome. But I think, as we both learned, it's difficult when you can't do the work for someone. Like at the end of the day, they have to do it. And you also have to understand like their different personalities or quirks that they may have to kind of motivate them to do things or get things done. So it was interesting. I had some people that completely crushed it. I have one guy that's going to have $1 million store this year,
Wow.
just from working with me. And, I think that I give him the credit for it, though. I think he, did the work. He sourced for 6-7 hours a day, pretty much every day, and worked his butt off. So like, that's kind of what happens when you do that for a year. You look back and you're doing $100K a month. So
yeah,
I think that's an important takeaway. You said like 6 to 7 hours a day, not like 2
yeah.
hours.
And I mean, that might not be realistic for
hours.
some people if they, you have a full-time job or whatever, but I think to grow fast, you have to put in some serious time, especially in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah, I think I've learned this recently. I didn't really know this before, but like this coaching stuff, when you're doing like biz op, which is like business opportunity stuff, which is what we're doing. A lot of it's not even like coaching. Like you want to coach on the tactical stuff. And I know you and I know me, like we're more tactical type of people. You probably weren't like a hoorah type of guy, but the reality of you're in this, you're in the motivational business. Like you're not in the, like you have to get them to source 6 hours a day, which I'm not good at that. And I'm more like, here's what you do. But really, if you want to win, you got to be like the hoorah, round the troops up,
right?
Chat, stuff like that. Which I didn't really know that till I had some failures, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here?
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just I don't think it's my personality type to like jump up and down and beat my chest and like be yelling at people in a group call. Like it's just not my thing. But some people respond really well, and some people need that kind of thing to succeed. So I think you got to just find what works for you, I guess, is kind of the challenge. One thing I will say about coaching, though, at least from what I've experienced in just the coaching realm, I think a lot of people are kind of fall victim to the coaching space in general. Like they just keep searching for this one thing or piece of information that they think is going to like change their life or their Amazon store and make them like magically rich or something. And I just don't really think that exists. Like, I think at the end of the day, you have to kind of commit to something and put the work in, because there's no like magic thing that's going to make you have 30% profit margin on Amazon or whatever you think is out there. Would be the main thing. Like you have to find your own edge and develop your own edge. Because like, that's the thing with coaching, even if you give someone an exact edge, an exact playbook to go by, like they still have to work at it and do good. And not only that, every time you're giving an edge away, you're diminishing, how good the edge is. So you have to be careful with giving people that. And then they rely on that. And then the edge dries up in a month and they're like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing now. So you just are like constantly restarting. So.
Yeah, that's funny that I think, dude, when I ran the seminar, it was just like, I think everybody thought that there was like a secret thing, which like I had all these questions on a doc and I was like, I'll be honest, guys, how they say there's no dumb questions. Like a lot of these are dumb questions. Like the whole point is what I'm going to teach you guys is like, here's some sick brands, here's some sick stuff. But like overall, you guys just need to focus and find your edge. Like you need to get really good at something because that's going to help you. And if you can get really good at one thing, like by yourself and on your own accord, you can probably get good at multiple things. You can pivot really quick. Because if you know how to look at like a huge Keepa thing, if you know how to look at all these brands, if you know how to just do all these different things, if it dries up, you can usually find another one. Like it's the same type of tactics. You just have to apply it somewhere else, which it's not like you just give it away. Like you said, you give it away to like 3 people and there you go. Like that's 3 times the order volume at the least. And usually you give somebody an edge and they just order 5 times what you order, like for whatever reason, because they think it's just amazing. So yeah, I think that's where the Amazon's a tough coaching thing. Like all you compete on is price. So it's hard. Like if I was teaching you marketing, you know, you could apply it. If you were doing fitness and I'm doing whatever, it doesn't even matter. But when you're just competing on one simple thing, it's really tough. It saturates it like really quick.
Right. I think courses, generally speaking, though, like not even necessarily Amazon courses. Like the way I look at courses, like if I'm going to buy a course, which I do buy courses, like if I want to learn something new, I would rather just pay someone that's really good at it.
Yep.
But I always like do pretty extensive research and kind of dig deep on whoever I decide to, you know, buy something from, which I would recommend to most people. But I think for me, the way I look at a course is like not necessarily if I'm getting an outcome, like I'm just trying to learn a skill or like one thing from the person that like someone could tell you one like thing to do and it could make you a ton of money if you just take that one thing and apply it. Like I know some people that will buy a course on like, let's just say Amazon, for example, like they introduce you to a prep center and then the prep center introduces you to some supplier they know. And it's like all these little things kind of compound over time. So if you can just stack like all these different things from different people, it kind of just comes together is the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, 100%. That's like literally what I've done the last 6 to 8 months. I've made like so much money in courses or groups or mentors and stuff. And it's like, I'm so much different now from what I like first paid for, but it all is just like these little things for me to optimally like put this thing together to make it good. So I completely agree. I think more people should look at it like that. It's like, you shouldn't look for like a magic pill, more so just how much stuff can you stack and let it compound.
And I think that's
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hey, John, you're a little bit quiet on here, I think. Your mic's turned down low.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it? Can you hear it now?
I noticed that. So when he was talking over you, I was like, John's little mic thing's moving like barely. So I think that's what it is.
Oh, is it better now?
Way better. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was going to say, I think it's similar to like almost like cooking or like having a recipe. Like you need the recipe, but like, can you cut the stuff? Can you like add the stuff together? And then it's like, oh, I think that's like kind of like the big part of this is I almost feel like when you have a coach or a mentor or something like that, it's almost best to use it when things are going wrong. Like you almost have to find your own way and then like ask them like, hey, is this normal? Or have you ever had this happen? Because if you just guide them one direction and then like, that's what my trainer always says. He's like, you have to be able to do this by yourself. Because one day, like, you're not going to want to pay me anymore, and then you're not going to know how to do it. So, like, you work out by yourself, and then, like, we'll meet in person, like, 2 or 3 times a month, and, like, we'll, like, kind of clean stuff up. But for the most part, like, if I'm with you every workout, like, it's just not practical for me. It's not practical for you. Like, you need to do it. I'll show you everything you have to do. So I think, like, that's a lot of Amazon, too. And, like, what you were saying before, like, people are just looking for that quick fix. I think it's, like, the question, like, do you know a good leads list? Like everyone's looking for the leads list and like they don't really exist. It's just like the same. It's like the same on everything, and there really is no good leads list at all.
Right.
It's just like you make your own good leads list. That's how you get a good one.
I think something interesting to kind of go along with what you said about like, you know, I could give you the recipe, but you know, you still have to cook it, you still have to prepare it, all the things. This is something I find interesting about coaching, particularly like me, Drew, and John could all offer coaching for Amazon, and we could all give a person very similar strategies and things to do, but they might like Drew or John better than me and respond to their way of saying it better, and they might have way better results, or vice versa. Like I think personally aligning with your coach is going to help you a lot. And if you don't have like a personal connection or like your coach personally, like if you think your coach is like a douche and you hate listening to him, like you're not going to respond well to the stuff he's telling you to do. It's just what I've seen.
Yeah, I know that's the case because almost everybody that paid me for coaching last year came from another program. So they were like, I didn't like the way this program went. I like you. I like your content. I thought me and you could go get a beer together. And it's like, well, I talk to him all the time. Like a guy, the most successful guy I had, we had him on the pod, and he went from like doing 20K a month in sales to making like 26K a month at the end of the year. And he's still making like 15, 25 grand a month. And I'm telling him to like get into this other stuff I'm doing too. And I was like, dude, I'll mentor you for free because I just love talking to him. Me and him just get along. But it's like, I thought after that happened, I'm like, oh, everybody's going to like it. But there's some people you just don't align with as much, especially because the people put on a front at the beginning, the coaches and the people. They're like, oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome. But then it wears down a little bit. Oh, shit, now I got to do the work. And then it's like really hard from there.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of people too who get coaches, or especially in this space, I think it's very like social media driven. It's I think I want that. Like that sounds like a good idea, or on paper it sounds great. And then once you get into it, you're like, ooh, like this is like Drew talks about it all the time. Like he'll talk to people and he's like, you should definitely like stop right now. Yeah. Like you'd be better off doing X, Y, Z. Like just because like you saw this on a TikTok, like it doesn't mean you have to go to a Nike outlet. There's like a million other things that you could do if you wanted to make extra money.
It's crazy. It's like everybody, the more I learn about the marketing too, I just understand this. Like everyone's just got these, like all the beliefs they have are just like marketing messages in their head. And they'll come to me and say like, oh, I hate doing this. I'm not making any money in this. I'm like, dude, just quit. Like, what are you doing? Like, I think they think, well, I'm just missing something, but it's like, dude, I quit. So, I mean, you can quit. And I was making way more money than you, I sure. But like sometimes if you're just losing money month after month, some guy told me he lost 12 grand. And I was like, dude, it's time to hang it up. Like this is a business where you shouldn't be losing 12 grand to get profitable. Like you got to do something else, man. Like, I don't know, but that should be and you hate it.
This isn't a tech startup. This is the next Google.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You gotta be making money.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not making money like the first year of doing it, like, yeah, I don't see a reason to continue trying, like, because then you're just going to keep, doing the same things that are getting you the same, bad result that you don't want. But there is a lot of that like sentiment, which, I mean, you don't want to give up on things. You don't want to quit. But there's a lot of that on Twitter, like, oh, like just keep going. Like you're going to make it. Like it's kind of like crypto, like we're all going to make it, like type of thing. And it's like, we're not all going to make it. Like, I hate to tell you guys, like we're not all going to make it. So if you can realize that you're not making it, after a lot of time and work, like it's fine to just do something else. Like it doesn't have to be, whatever.
Like we talked about on the pod, like 2 pods ago, it's like the GameStop stock. It's like you lost, like it's over. Like, time to like cash in whatever chips you have left and like move on.
Right.
Yeah, I think people.
Right. That is interesting.
Well, go ahead. You go first.
That is an interesting line that John just said. Like cash in your chips and walk away. I think that's something that a lot of Amazon sellers don't know how to do or when to do. Like I think at some point, like you just need to take your money off the table, whether it be like giving yourself more of a salary or, buying less inventory, or eventually deciding that you don't want to do Amazon anymore, like Drew did. Like Drew just decided, I'm going to just cash my chips out and be done with it. Like this served its purpose. I think a lot of Amazon sellers kind of struggle with like finding that point or like how to do that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. I think 2 things. One, people think it's not PvP, and it is PvP. Like you're not all going to make it. Like, okay, it's like me versus you. Like that's how the thing works, or like my group versus your group. And I think everybody just thinks it's like kumbaya, which it's not. It's like not like that at all. But 2, yeah, getting stuff. My whole decision was, okay, how big do I want this to be? I don't think I'm going to make $1 million. I think the risk I'm going to take on to make $1 million is going to be nearly impossible. And right now I'm very comfortable with where I'm at. So I could keep trying and maybe adding 5, 10, 15 grand a month for the next few months, or I just stop now and I know I can't lose anymore. Like it's not even possible for me to have any risk if I just have the money sitting there. That was kind of the whole thing I came to. I didn't have that number in mind when I started OA, like at all. But the number now, it's like, okay, I can kind of retire for like 5, 6, 7 years because I have low expenses. That's fine. I'll figure something out in that time. I mean, maybe not. Maybe we're here 6 years and you guys are like, what are you doing? It's like, still trying to figure it out, dude, but I doubt it. I think that I'll figure something out and I have enough cash to just sit on it. which I wouldn't be able to do that. If I was still buying 100K of inventory every month, I'd be stressed out and trying to find something else. It's like impossible. It doesn't line up. Yeah. Which is the same way as in crypto or anything, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you're in the game, the more susceptible you are to like losing it all with anything.
I think the initial response is to double down and try to make back what you did or didn't, or to always try to double it, and then it just doesn't go well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Amazon at higher levels, I've heard some, advanced sellers say this, but like at a high level, it almost becomes like high stakes poker. Like you're essentially given cards and you have to figure out how to play with what you have. And a lot of the times you just can't control what you're given. And you're just constantly having to adjust to different situations. And you have a lot of risk on the line too when you're at higher stakes. So,
yep, 100%. Yeah, I guess last year when I decided I stopped buying inventory November 1st of last year, and I was like, well, I should probably buy through Q4 because this is like the best opportunity, right? But I looked at the number of money and I was like, what if I dump it all for Q4 and something crazy happens and now I'm just like really pissed off going to the new year and I have like 40 grand. I'd be really pissed off about that. So yeah, that was a tough decision, dude. It's like so hard to kind of get to the point where you're going to quit too. Cause it's like all my friends are in the Amazon space, like you guys and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I wasn't making money. I was still making money. I don't know. It took a lot. And really it was talking to those big guys, man. Like it was talking to these guys that were really stressed out. And I was like, this is my goal. Like, this is the best it gets. This is bad. Like, I don't want to go that way of it,
Well, I think for young guys, especially, you have like sort of an identity thing. Like you're attached to Amazon or you're attached to your business. Like, I know I've struggled with this. Like if my business doesn't make money on like a certain month or as much money as I want to, like I'm pissed off and I feel terrible about myself. And it's like, you shouldn't have that. Like, I think for a lot of young guys, like for me personally, like I've had to look to like spiritual things and like different things to kind of associate my identity with rather than like if I'm making any, $20,000 a month or $10,000 a month or whatever. Like, and I think a lot of people fall into that trap. And I think it's just ultimately going to set you up for, being sad and like depressed eventually, because eventually you're going to have a bad month or a bad year or something like bad's going to happen. So you can't really attach your identity to that too much. Something that I've seen a lot of people.
Yeah. You shouldn't ever attach like numbers or success or failure or anything. Yeah. It's got to be something outside of that realm. I mean, I struggled with the same thing. I was like, people would, people ask you all the time, what do you do? Especially me, I'm 25. I haven't had a job in 7 years. So it's like, what do you do? And I'm like, these days, I don't even know. I just got to figure stuff out on the internet.
I have a podcast.
Yeah, used to, it was like, I do Amazon. They go, oh, how much does that make you? I'm like, a lot. Don't say it like that, but now it's like nothing really. I just had somebody ask me that.
And I think
unemployed. I don't know.
And I think all that is like put on yourself too, because I think in your head, you become like, the Amazon guy or the guy that's making money. And like, you think your friends and your family are like, they like you because of that. And at the end of the day, it's like, no one gives a shit. Like they like you because you're Drew and you're cool and fun to hang out with. Like they don't care about all that other stuff. So I think if you're just a good person and, you treat people right, like I feel like that's what people care about. And I think that's all, internal that you give yourself anyways. So it just doesn't really matter.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And yeah, it's always hard. Like, because you do feel bad. Like if you crush a month and then the next month you don't crush. And sometimes that's not because of you. It's because your inventory is in transfer or you get gated or something stupid out of your control happens or your prep center steals all your shit or whatever it happens to be. And that just like wears on you mentally. And I think for you, like what you were saying too about like taking your chips off the table, I feel like this year, like I'm just doing it much differently. We're like at the size I'm at, it's the most profitable it's been. And it's like, I'm keeping it at that size. Like I take money out a certain amount. I've always done it this way every single month. Like I've maxed out like a Roth IRA. Like it's like very systematic. And like, if that were to change, then I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't a great opportunity for me right now. But I do feel for most people, like this is a great opportunity.
Yep.
especially if you're
Right.
trying to make like an extra 1 or 2K.
Easy.
I mean, you could scale it up from there, but if you're looking to make extra money, I mean, I think this is probably one of the easier things to even
Yeah,
get
for
involved
sure. I
in.
mean, if you're looking to make $1,000 to $10,000 a month in something that you can do with a job or like
Mm-hmm.
with kids, all that kind of stuff, I think this is, for sure one of the easier things. It's pretty hands off. Besides if you prep and ship your own items, really, it's probably the most time consuming part if you decide to do that,
Yeah.
which you don't have to do. But
Yeah, arbitrage in general, I guess. Like if you're doing eBay, if you're doing Facebook, Amazon, and Amazon's just the biggest scale of it. Yeah, there's like nothing too much easier than just finding cheap shit and selling it for more expensive to people. You don't do any marketing, you don't do anything like that. Yeah, it is very good for beginning people if you have any amount of capital, for sure. So it's not like I'm like anti the opportunity either. It's just, at a certain extent, I just like, I don't know. I hate to say too, there's a ceiling. That's like, I know the Twitter sentiment right now is like, well, you can do this and you can just. Actually, this isn't going to sound like wonderful. Probably makes me sound a bit conceited, but dude, this is one thing I've saw on Twitter so much of like, well, there's this guy doing 5 million, 10 million OA, and I'm like, do you understand that like the exception to the rule is not like the generality in the rule, which is like a low IQ thing to be like, well, this guy can do it. Look, it's like, well, dude, you have to recognize the pattern here. Like, not a lot of guys are doing it, like at all. There's barely anybody above like even $1 million a year. You're probably over 100K a year, to be honest. And making 6 figures a year, it's like just because one guy does it doesn't mean that like it's just a really big exception. There's exceptions everywhere. So that shouldn't like set the standard of it. And I think that's a sentiment that's shared all the time. And I'm like, you guys just don't get patterns or something. I don't understand what's the deal there.
Well, because I think too, you never see any losses. Like you don't see like the droves of people who went out with 20, 30K in credit card debt. Like no one's tweeting that. Like you could go through, like if I go through my Instagram every once in a while, I'll go to like try to clean it up. It's like, I forgot about this guy. Oh, this guy too, or this person or that person. Like where the hell happened to all these people? And like, they're gone. Like there's some like post like 2 years ago, like, this sucks. Like I'm getting a job, or like, we got like burnt out, we're in debt, like this isn't for us, or whatever it happens to be. But like no one's sharing that, or like it's not getting engagement. Like it's just like, yo, you could take this shit to the moon. Like don't worry about anything.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That's something that I was actually thinking about. Exactly like you said. When bad stuff happens, with it being an internet thing, like people just disappear and you just never hear from them again. And it's like if you were in a different business industry where it's like an in-person thing, like you see them close their doors and like bankrupt and like all these things. But with this industry, you just don't really see that because it's all digital. Which I do understand people that like try to be positive and have like a good sentiment. Like I think that's ultimately good. But at the same time, I think people should share like bad things that happen or their losses just to kind of show awareness to people, like that this is possible, like this can happen to you. And if it does happen to you, it doesn't make you any, dumber or, less talented than the people that it didn't happen to. Like, I think there's so much randomness that goes into Amazon that we just can't control. And I think sometimes when you have success, you have to make sure that like it wasn't randomness that gave you a bunch of success and then try to do the same thing again and then it doesn't work. Like I think you have to acknowledge that on both sides, when you fail and when you succeed, that like there's a lot of moving parts that had nothing to do with you when that happened.
Yep. Just kind of,
I feel like you have to be like positive / realistic. And then like you see all this stuff on Twitter, especially, it's like, oh, like you were saying with luck, like I don't know how many people actually get ungated with Target invoices. I'd probably say like less than 2% of the people. And the sentiment is just like, oh, just keep resubmitting. Oh, don't worry about it. Just keep resubmitting. And later these people are like, it doesn't work. And I'll get a DM. It's like, I've never had Target work for me personally. And they're like, but everyone says keep resubmitting. I'm just like, I mean, I guess you could follow them and still stay ungated, or you could buy from someone else that is known to let you get ungated.
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen with all that stuff. One thing that the positive, now that I'm out of it, I'm like looking at it from a marketing perspective. And it's like, dude, that's a really dangerous place to get into where there's like no losses and there's only good things. And there's lots of like, I'm going to use my numbers from here to promote this. Like, dude, the FTC, if they can crack down on that, which you have to get to a certain number before that happens, but it's happened in other industries, like all over the place. I wonder, like, the guys that are really killing it in the info space here, how much they're pushing the line of the FTC stuff, especially their sales guys. Like there's, I don't want to name any names, but there's a big guy in the space that has a sales guy that's very, very, pushy with stuff. I'll share it to you guys after the pod. But like from what I've heard from guys that have talked to him, I'm like, dude, that's like really pushing the like laws of like, I promise you can do this and this. It's like, dude, you can't be doing that to people, especially when it's like like business opportunity. You can't be, I promise you can make 10K a month. Okay, man, that's like, you can't really say that to somebody. That's pushing the lines of that stuff, especially if you're doing millions of dollars a year. Yeah, you're going to get cracked for sure. And then they're going to look through your tweets. They're going to look through your DMs. They're going to subpoena your emails, all this stuff. And they're like, dude, you've been lying to everybody. Like, and you not even do it. Like, that's the tough part about it. I think that we could see a crackdown like that if it just continues to grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. I truly don't know that much about like the behind the scenes stuff that goes on in the course space. You're probably a lot more informed than I am, just because people probably are sending it to you all the time.
They don't stop. It's crazy. They just spill their guts.
But I do find it interesting, just people that do that in general. I think you always have that threat of like the FTC or like government regulation. I do find it interesting, like the lifestyle I see people live like that. Like I don't see people that do info like commit to like long-term mortgages or like below money on stuff that like they're locked into, which is kind of interesting. It's just what I've noticed. Like it just seems like most people opt for like a short-term, like cool lifestyle that like they could get out of at any point if they needed to.
Yeah.
Which is probably good.
Yeah. I didn't really think about it like that. Yeah. Which you kind of have to. I mean, I don't know if they're aware of the risks. And I'd like to know, like, I would like to talk to some of the big guys that are doing, like, there's a lot of those private label guys too. I mean, those info guys are making like millions and millions of dollars a year. I know one of them, I got some behind the scenes info on that, and he had sold his company for like damn near like 100 mil. And I was like, whoa, that's huge. But I'm sure he probably realized like the FTC is coming soon. I'm just going to get out of here now because I'm promising these people all this stuff. But yeah, it's,
move out of the country.
Yeah, which I don't know how much you have to. All it takes is some complaints. That's the thing. You have a little, especially when you're in these groups, like you have hundreds of thousands of dollars coming in every month. You have hundreds of customers. Like how many does it take for something bad to happen? That's like really scary to me. That was another thing that like, I don't know if I'll ever do any info in the biz space like that or try to scale it. Cause that you see that stuff happen a lot. Like you can only get it so high until the government comes in.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it too is like done in the dark though. Like you send a DM, like you get on a call, like you don't really have that much proof. I mean, I guess you could like go through their Twitter and stuff, but yeah, it's like kind of generic though. But like, I feel like when I like sign up and do training, like I have to sign a contract that says like all this shit that like, like this is what we're doing. And, if this happens, he's not responsible or whatever. I feel like if there was more stuff like that, which is pretty crazy because some of these programs are like let's say 5 to 10 grand, 5, 7, 10 grand. And like, you don't have a contract. You just have like some verbal agreement with someone like you just DM'd like a week or two ago to maybe watch like an hour of content. I guess when you put it in that realm, it sounds pretty crazy. Yeah. Something to do. But we got a private label coach and we wired the guy like $5 grand. He had like a couple tweets or whatever. We had a call with him. We're like, this guy seems legit. And like we gave up on the opportunity, or we went different ways. I wouldn't even say we gave up on it. But like it was like, now that I think about it, I'm like, shit.
Yeah, it's scary.
I didn't really think that through.
Yeah. I think like the FTC or like any, government agency like that is interesting because essentially, I mean, if they want to find something that you did wrong, I think pretty much everybody, they could find something that they could say. It's kind of like, the IRS or something. Like they could find somewhere that you kind of stretch the boundaries or something for, the vast majority of people out there. So it's kind of interesting how all that works and like who gets determined as bad or good, like in their eyes. So it's definitely interesting stuff. How was your private label experience? I'm curious about that.
I mean, well, it was more so my fault that didn't go well because I had something really big happen at the time. That's when I made a lot of money doing like something happen. So like I was like, John, I don't have time to do this, man. I've like got all this other stuff going on. Like, I'm sorry, we're just gonna have to take the L. And it wasn't progressing like quick. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know the way that the coach had gone about it. It was just like a longer process, and he told us that, and we said yes, but it was just way longer than I thought it was going to be. Like it just, I don't know. I'm not that patient, man. Like at all.
Yeah, I think we went in it being patient. And then, like, it was kind of a blessing because she was like, yeah, I have all this stuff going on. And I was like, so do I. Like, I was kind of like, didn't want to, like, give in and be like, yeah, I don't think we should do this anymore. And then he's like, we got to talk. I was like, oh, I hope he says, like, he doesn't want to do this anymore. And that was kind of it. But, yeah, I think, like, it was just too, I don't want to say, like, wishy-washy. It was more like, oh, here's homework. Let me know when it's done. Yeah, and like this was like we knew it would be work, but we kind of treated it as like a side project. I mean, we were both running like big Amazon businesses, both doing coaching, like just had a lot of irons in the fire. And then just to kind of lop this on top of it, and then it was just, I don't know. I almost wish it was. I liked how it was structured. It was more like, hey, what are you into? So like you don't give this up. But I think if it was more just like, hey, this is what sells. Like, let's just try to prototype this and see what happens, instead of like, I think we were trying to build like a brand, which you are, but it was just way too out there, too much out there. Like, it was like we were trying to do way too much, where we probably could have just been like, hey, let's just sell a garlic press or something. Like, that's a bad example, but like if it was more just like that, like here's an area you should look at, let's figure out how we could like change it up or whatever and like get some nice packaging on it. But instead it was like, oh, you need to care about it. And then I was like, what do you guys care about? It's like, well, making money, selling on Amazon. Like, those aren't good like product ideas, like kind of thing. Like, we were like, oh, we like sports, like we like craft beer. Like, it was just really like, I don't know, hard and frustrating to kind of nail something down. It's not like we have like a love for like something specific that was like a product, I guess. Right. At the time, and it was just like, I feel like something like that just takes a lot of focus, and we were doing too many other things, and we just couldn't get together.
Yeah. Have you thought about that route at all?
Not really. I looked at it a little bit last year. I just feel like it's such a mixed experience for people, and I think, like you said, it's a really long process. And I think that's something that kind of relates to, you know, our realm of Amazon. Like, everyone wants like a quick dopamine hit. Like, anybody can go buy something from Target and flip it and get the sale, and like that feels great. But I think that people that win are the ones that can kind of delay that for like 3 months, 6 months, and, you know, be calling suppliers, be placing orders that aren't going to arrive for 2 months. Like, all that stuff kind of builds up over time. And I think in the long run, when you kind of play like that, you'll end up winning in the future. But I don't know. I think the pickleball niche would be interesting for private label, but I'm sure that's probably like super saturated right now, if I had to guess.
Probably. I've heard so like, I want to do some pickleball like this.
Who knows if pickleball will be around though in 2 years? It might phase out. So that's kind of the hard part about that.
Yeah.
That's
but I don't know.
I think,
if anybody wants to make a pickleball product with me, I'd be down.
I think a problem with me, like, I get the waiting. Like, I've waited like months to make money. I just got my first sale today on the thing I'm running, which was like awesome. It's like $7, but still, I at least want like data, like feedback. And if you're like calling suppliers and you're trying to make this product, and at the end of the day, you don't know if it's going to work. Like, I get the, like, you have to wait, but I do want like some data. And like another thing I've learned throughout, like after we did the private label and now what I'm learning now, you can kind of launch a product, not on Amazon, but you can launch a product just on Shopify and run some ads to it and just create pre-orders and get people on a wait list to see if there's demand, to see if it's even worth your time. Like, the internet's so fast and like rapid these days that it's really hard to justify, like, let's try to build this for a year, and if it doesn't work, let's just restart for another year. Like, that's fucking crazy. Like when you could get instant data back a lot of different ways, even with the OA and RA stuff. Like even if you don't make money, you can still go out and try to find a product and get data like immediately. And I think there's so many avenues where you can do that. Very hard to justify not being able to get at least some sort of data back on it. And that was kind of my big problem with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a long waiting game, but whatever. We got anything else to say? Hour and 10 minutes almost. You got any closing words for the people? Inspirational?
Yeah, what do you got for the people?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess with Amazon, I think right now a lot of people are probably, I feel like the general sentiment is that things are difficult and a lot of people are having a hard time with it. But, you know, I'm sure there's people out there that are absolutely crushing it. It's just kind of how it goes with this sort of business. But yeah, I would say for anybody out there, you know, if you're pretty new to it and you're having a hard time, just kind of keep at it and see how it plays out. I think with Amazon, you really need 6 months to a year to evaluate your performance anyways. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just kind of keep at it. And then people that are in it that, you know, don't want to be in it or having a bad, you know, stretch with it, like there's nothing wrong with deciding that you just don't want to do it anymore. Like there's so many other things that you can go do. And I think I see a lot of people that get like trapped in Amazon forever and they like hate that they didn't try something else, especially if you're young. So that would be my advice to the people. Be careful with leverage and debt and, you know, just don't scale to the moon because somebody told you to, you know, actually dig into your numbers and understand the risk that you're taking on. So,
what a wholesome message.
Yeah.
You want to push anybody? You want anybody to follow you anywhere? I know you're not super active on anything, so you'll plug anything.
I mean, you guys can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, but you know, if you don't want to follow me, that's fine too. You can hit me up with any questions that you have, anything like that. So I'm always around. But yeah, man.
Sounds good. Well, everybody, check us out check out John's group. He just launched his advanced arbitrage tactics. Give a little plug.
Yeah, check out Arbitrage Tactics. First call will be the Tuesday, so definitely get in. There'll be a link down below.
It's $15 you're stealing from John. That's what you're stealing the info from his brain. It's $15. It's nothing.
Pretty much. So I hope to see you guys in there for the first call. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace. Thanks for being here, Kyle.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Peace.